The attack on Buenos Aires had left the world in shock, its firestorm still burning in the minds of every citizen of the Federation. In the aftermath, the Federation Council gathered in Geneva, their chamber heavy with grief and outrage. It was there the Sky Marshal Dennis stepped forward, his voice carrying over the hushed assembly. With grim resolve, he declared that the Arachnids' homeworld, Klendathu, had been identified as the source of the strike. The time for mourning, he told them, was over. The Federation would not stand idle. It would answer fire with fire. The plans for a grand offensive were set in motion, and humanity prepared to carry the war to the very heart of the Arachnid threat. Division force gathered at Battlestation Ticonderoga, a colossal fortress of steel and firepower suspended in the depths of the Arachnid quarantine zone. Its hangar bays thundered constant activity, dropships roaring to life, weapons stockpiled in endless rows, troopers marching precise columns beneath banners of the Federation. From orbit, the station gleamed like a spearhead poised to plunge into enemy territory. Here the Federation had committed its full strength. Entire mobile infantry divisions assembled, their ranks swelling with fresh recruits and seasoned veterans alike, each sworn to carry the fight to Klendathu. Above them, the might of the fleet loomed, armadas of starships stretching into the void, halls bristling with cannons and missile batteries, their crews steeled for the coming storm. Together they were the embodiment of Dennis' vow, that humanity would not cower behind walls, but strike boldly into the darkness to claim survival, or perish in attempt. The fleet entered the campaign with confidence, born of intelligent reports and past skirmishes. The Arachnids, it was believed, possessed little in ways of true orbital defenses. Only scattered plasma bugs, buried deep within their hive world, were expected to respond, spitting fire skyward in random bursts of light, little more than harassment against the scale of the Federation's armada. Admirals and tacticians predicted air superiority would be secured within hours. With the skies cleared, the fleet could anchor directly above the designated drop zones, their massive carriers and battleships casting shadows over Klendathu's surface. From there, the MI would descend in waves, to drag capsules streaking through the atmosphere like falling stars, delivering humanity's vengeance straight into the heart of the Arachnid territory. Attack fighters would scream overhead, unleashing precision strikes to shield the infantry and pulverize hive clusters before they could disgorge their hordes. On paper, the balance was clear. Technology, discipline, and numbers would deliver victory. Fleet and MI together would dominate the surface, sweeping aside any Arachnid counterattack and proving that humanity, not insects, would decide the fate of Klendathu. The offensive opened up with a thunder of arrival. Fleet elements surged into Klendathu's system, their formation stretching across the void like a wall of steel. At the heart of the armada, with the corvette transports, colossal carriers that bore both the wings of the sky and soldiers of the ground war. From the cavernous bays, attack fighter squadrons roared into the black, engines blazing as they cut ahead of the main force to clear the skies. Moments later, the bulky DR-4 Viking dropships disengaged from their clamps, their armored hulls glowing red from atmospheric entry. Each carried a full company of Mobile Infantry, packed shoulder to shoulder, their faces set as they prepared to descend into the Arachnid stronghold below. Entire divisions plunged toward Klendathu's surface in wave after wave, the night sky above the planet lit by fire trails of humanity's vengeance. For the first few minutes, everything unfolded according to plan. Drop capsules and Vikings rained toward the surface in ordered waves, and the fleet held its orbit steady above Klendathu. Then, the ground came alive. From hidden hive vents across the planet, the Arachnid's first plasma salvos erupted, arcing into the black with blinding intensity. Vast columns of fire clawed towards the sky, their thunder shaking the atmosphere. As military intelligence had predicted, the opening fire seemed scattered and ineffective. Bursts of flashing close to the fleet but finding no mark. And still the operation pressed forward with confidence. Deployment continued unhindered. The fleet certain that the bugs' weapons were little more than random defiance. But the illusion of safety shattered within minutes. Plasma bug batteries, once thus scattered and erratic, erupted in terrifying unison. The skies above Klendathu blazed a coordinated fire, each call of energy lancing upward with pinpoint accuracy. The fleet reeled. Transports and escorts alike were struck. Hulls ripped open in blossoms of fire and debris. One corvette transport, a structure gutted by a direct hit, lurched helplessly out of formation. Its dying course carried it into the path of another ship, and the two collided in a chain of explosions that turned both into drifting graveyards. Even as the fleet above burned, the first wave of mobile infantry slammed into Klendathu's surface. Within minutes, thousands of troops had landed. At first, the landings seemed uncontested. Drop zones were secured, perimeters established, and the columns of men began to advance outward. For a brief, fragile moment, it seemed the Federation's strategy was holding true. Then came the first contacts. Sporadic bursts of rifle fire echoed across the barren plains as MI companies stumbled on hidden bug holes or isolated warrior patrols. Where plasma vents were discovered, tactical oxygen nukes were unleashed. Blinding eruptions of fire and fury that collapsed tunnels and vaporized the creatures within. Warrior bugs that surfaced in small numbers were cut down in disciplined volleys, their carcasses littering the dust. On the surface, the battle still looked winnable. The mobile infantry were pushing forward. The skirmish is one-sided. They advanced steady. As the mobile infantry pressed outward, extending the perimeter around the drop zones, the barren landscape of Klendathu seemed to come alive. Bug holes that had lain silent during the first hours of the landing erupted with swarms, pouring forth warrior bugs in numbers far beyond what military intelligence had anticipated. The first clashes were manageable, companies holding their lines, rifle fire cutting down the vanguard of chittering claws and mandibles. But each engagement grew heavier than the last, the enemy surging in greater waves, their coordination no longer haphazard but deliberate, relentless. The soldiers realized with dawning horror that the Arachnids had not been caught unprepared at all. They had mobilized in force long before the fleet arrived, waiting beneath the ground for the perfect moment to strike. What was once a steady advance began to buckle under the weight of countless enemies. The landing zones no longer secure footholds. The mobile infantry held the ground as best they could. Troopers fought in disciplined firing lines, volleys of Morito fire, tearing into the first waves of charging Arachnids. For a fleeting moment it seemed though that the discipline might hold against the chaos. But above, the skies betrayed them. The fleet hammered by relentless fire of plasma bugs, could no longer maintain control of orbit. Attack fighters were scattered, close air support sporadic at best, leaving the soldiers below without the burning shield they had been promised. Deprived of that lifeline, the balance shifted. The Arachnids poured forward in endless numbers, a swarm surging through with terrifying speed and coordination. Firing lines broke beneath the sheer weight of advancing warriors. The battle collapsed into brutal, close-quarters chaos. Troopers screamed as they were dragged down, impaled on barbed claws or ripped apart by mandibles. Limbs were torn from torsos, men crushed beneath living ties of armor and rage. The clean volleys of rifle fire dissolved into desperate struggles for survival. And the killing fields of Klendathu became a slaughterhouse. Barely half an hour into the assault, the battle had slipped beyond the Federation's grasp. Entire mobile infantry divisions, hammered by relentless swarms that cut off from the skies above, found themselves unable to push forward. The initiative, so confidently claimed in opening minutes, was gone. At last, the order came down from orbit: retreat. Every MI division was commanded to abandon the advance and fall back to landing zones for extraction. What discipline still remained shattered under the weight of that single word. Columns of troopers turned back through the dust and wreckage, their once ordered formations unraveling as warrior bugs poured after them in unrelentless pursuit. The retreat became a desperate flight for survival. Dropships descending to pull units out were forced to lift off half full, their rams still crowded with men as the swarms closed in. Along the retreating lines, acts of valor flickered like dying sparks. Squads fought to the last magazine to buy seconds for the comrades to escape. Troopers turned back into the tide, dragging wounded friends only to be cut down themselves. Others threw themselves into hopeless stands, rifles blazing until the enemy buried them under waves of chitin and claws. The fields of Klendathu became a graveyard, littered with broken weapons and shattered bodies. Overhead, the fleet strained to snatch survivors from the inferno. What had begun as a promise of dominance had collapsed into a rout, one written in blood and fire, and the sacrifice of thousands. One by one, the last of survivors were pulled from the surface. Dropships streaked upward through fire and smoke, burying bloodied, broken mobile infantry to the battered remnants of the fleet. Those who lived staggered onto the decks of surviving corvette transports, haunted by the screams of comrades left behind. Below them, the landing zones they had bled to secure were abandoned. swallowed whole by the advancing Arachnid swarms. With no hope of recovery, the fleet sounded the final withdrawal. Engines thundered as the Armada turned away, retreating towards the battle station. Behind them, Klendathu spun silently in the void, its surface crawling with the victorious Arachnids. The Federation left nothing behind. No troops, no outposts, no claims to the battlefield. The offensive was over. The first strike against the Arachnid homeworld, heralded as humanity's decisive blow, had ended in disaster. Klendathu remained firmly in bug hands, and the Terran armed forces retreated, scarred and diminished, to reckon with the cost of their failed invasion. The scale of the disaster only became clearer once the fleet limped back to the battle station. Casualty lists poured in, each line another name erased from the Federation's ranks. By the end, the numbers told a story more brutal than any propaganda could disguise. An estimated 308,000 troops had fallen during the Klendathu invasion. Of these, 305,000 were confirmed killed in action. Nearly a third of them lost in the first hour alone, as the invasion collapsed. Another 3,000 were listed as wounded, their bodies broken but still clinging to life. And then there were the missing, 205,000 troops unaccounted for, swallowed by Klendathu's hives or scattered across its wastelands. Their fate was left to grim speculation. Buried alive beneath tunnels, torn apart in the swarms, or worse. In all, 514,000 mobile infantry had been committed to Klendathu. More than 500,000 soldiers marched into the Arachnid stronghold. The losses on the fleet side were no different. Many of the ships that had braved Klendathu's lower orbit were no longer capable of moving under their own power. Hulls were ruptured, engines burned out, bridges gutted by plasma fire. Whole transports and escorts had to be lashed or tugged by their surviving sisters, limping through space like wounded animals. The gamble of massing so many vessels low in orbit had left them vulnerable, and the Arachnids had exploited it with ruthless efficiency. News of the defeat rippled outward, shaking the very foundations of the Federation. Confidence in the military machine faltered, and morale across the colonies and homeworlds plummeted. The images of shattered transports, burning drop zones, and endless waves of Arachnids would haunt both civilians and soldiers alike. Strategically, the disaster left the Federation crippled. With so many ships gutted and so many divisions annihilated, the surviving forces were in no position to contest the Arachnid numbers. The bugs surged outward from Klendathu, swarming against Federation holdings in all directions, their advance no longer checked by the promise of human superiority. Sky Marshal Dines resigned in disgrace, his name forever tied to the disaster. His successor, Sky Marshal Tanhat Moru, inherited not only a fractured fleet and a bloody mobile infantry, but also the burden of restoring faith in the Federation's ability to fight.